A man is talking quietly to himself. His wife is lying on his chest, while he's running his fingers softly through her hair. The gentle gesture is a complete contrast from his violent musings. He's expressing his intent to crack her lovely skulls and unspooling her brain to understand her thoughts. The man wonders 3 questions to himself. What is his wife thinking? How is his wife feeling? And what have they done to each other? On January 8, 2005, this same man is seen at a house party in New York. His name is Nick Dunn, a charming writer who writes for the men's magazine. Not knowing anyone at the party, he approaches his soon-to-be wife, Amy. She is a fellow writer, and writes personality quizzes for magazines. They start to talk endlessly to each other at the party. As they are walking home together, they pass through a bakery on the street. Nick asks Amy if he can kiss her. Charmed by his easy smiles and down-to-earth nature, Amy lets him. Fast forward 7 years later, in the morning of July 5th, Nick is driving his vehicle to a bar. Along with his sister, Margot, they co-own the bar. Margot pours herself and her brother a drink. She points out that he looks troubled. With a mournful sigh, the man answers that it's his 5th-year anniversary with Amy. He doesn't look particularly happy, and dreads coming home to his wife. After a call from his neighbor, Nick eventually goes home. He enters the house and calls for Amy. But there is no answer. He finds it strange and goes to the living room. There, the table has been flipped over and broken glasses are everywhere. Now worried, he screams Amy's name and calls the police. Detective Rhonda and Officer James arrive at the scene to look around. They inspect the place around. Rhonda notes a smear of blood in the kitchen above the counter. She also discovers that Amy is the kid in the book called Amazing Amy. The book series is written by Amy's parents and named after her. Nick is brought into the police station for questioning. After a few questions, Detective Rhonda finds it odd that he doesn't seem to know anything about his wife. He doesn't know any of her friends, her jobs, her hobbies, or even her blood type. The detective reminds him to call Amy's parents to let them know of the situation. While he's on the phone, he finds that his father is right next door. The police found him wandering around, looking confused. After a long day, Nick drives his father back to his clinic and goes home to Margot's place. Back in the house, Detective Rhonda, along with the forensics team, are investigating the place. Before coming in, a pregnant neighbor, called Noelle, approaches the detective. She claims that she is Amy's best friend and asks about her condition. Detective Rhonda refuses to answer and promises to come back to talk to her later. Inside the house, she finds that the house, car, credit card, utilities, phone bill, and even the bar, are all under Amy's name. Unsurprising given her wealth, the officer points out that it is still embarrassing for her husband. Inside the bedroom, they find their first clue. An envelope is placed neatly in a clothing drawer, with clue 1 written on it. The next day, Nick wakes up and heads to the press conference. Amy's rich parents have set up voluntary headquarters, a hotline and a website to find their daughter. Ending the press conference, the police bring them in for questioning. Amy's father reveals that in the past, Amy had a stalker, named Desi. He was obsessed and threatened to kill himself after Amy broke up with him. The family filed a restraining order against him 20 years following the incident. Although a long time ago, Amy's father insisted that he just moved to St. Louis, which was only 2 hours away. He also named another assailant, Tommy. About 8 years ago, Tommy got violent after Amy broke up with him. She pressed charges against him, but the family doesn't know the whole details. By letting Amy's parents go, Detective Rhonda asks Nick about the clue she found the other day. He explains that it's a clue for their treasure hunt. Every year on their anniversaries, they would do one of these treasure hunts for their presents. They follow the first clue to Nick's office, where they find a second clue. Detective Rhonda also finds a red underwear and bags it for evidence. Nighttime comes and Nick heads to his father's old home where he finds the third clue. Arriving before the detective, Nick pockets the envelope for himself. A few days after Amy disappears, Nick gets a mysterious text on his burner phone. The text says that the person is right outside Margot's house. He opens the door. A young woman, Andy, enters the house and starts kissing Nick. Andy is Nick's girlfriend of 1.5 years. It turns out, Nick is having an affair with one of his students. With him in the spotlight after Amy's disappearance, he reminds Andy to keep quiet about their relationship. He also warns his girlfriend to never mention his intention to divorce Amy. The news have been reporting him as an unemphatic sociopath for acting normal and not showing any despair. If the media knows that he cheats on her, he would definitely be a prime suspect. Margot later finds out that her brother has been lying. She angrily asks him if the underwear in his office is Margot's. Nick and Margot both can't remember if it is. Nick opens up to his sister that his relationship with Amy was rocky. In a flashback, it's shown that, after they both lost their jobs and moved to Missouri, they started having fights. Amy thought her husband was not understanding enough. To make matters worse, Nick's mother was diagnosed with cancer and passed away soon. Seeing Nick interacting with people around him made Amy feel unwanted. To make up for this, Amy suggested having kids. Nick was against the idea and in the heat of the moment, threw Amy against the staircase. During a vigil for Amy, Nick is giving a speech to motivate people on finding Amy. His speech is interrupted by Noelle, Amy's supposed best friend. She loudly asks him in front of everyone if he knows Amy is 6 weeks pregnant. After sparking another media conflict, Nick flees the scene. Back inside the house, Detective Rhonda discloses that someone wiped a pool of blood in the kitchen. This arouses her suspicion as the crime scene in the living room suggested kidnapping. However, a kidnapping would not result in a huge loss of blood in the kitchen, which suggested homicide. She states that most couples fight about their financial problems. So, the police went through his credit card records. She points out that Nick buys a lot of expensive stuff and is in debt. Nick denies any of this claim, saying that he never buys any of them. The detective continues on by handing over Amy's life insurance policy. Earlier that year, Nick had bumped his wife's life insurance benefit to $1.2 million. Once again, Nick denies the claim, saying that Amy insisted on him doing it. In the midst of the argument, Rhonda gets a call about Amy's blood sample result. The call confirms that she is indeed pregnant. Noelle even further confirms that the couple's marriage is not ideal. With all this evidence, the police shift their prime suspect to Nick. Realizing that his situation is getting worse, Nick finally demands a lawyer. Margot comes home and demands an explanation for Amy's pregnancy. Nick admits lying to his sister in the past. He confesses that he's the one that wants kids, not Amy. However, at that time Margot already hated Amy. If she knows Amy was the reason they didn't have kids, she'll hate her more. Nick doesn't want her sister to hate his wife even more. Hearing this, Margot leaves the house disappointed. She tells her brother that nobody is going to believe him now. While Nick is trying to solve Amy's third clue, the detectives are busy with their investigation. They talk with a shady dealer and ask about Amy. The dealer reveals to Detective Rhonda that Amy came by and bought a gun from him. Getting more convinced that Amy felt unsafe in her own house, the pair go back to Nick's father's home. In the basement, they find Amy's diary. Written inside are all incriminating evidence against Nick. Amy writes about being pregnant and how the child will save their failing marriage. She also writes about being afraid that the father of her child may kill her. It's the reason she buys a gun from a shady dealer. This revelation further confirms the investigator's suspicion that Nick is the one that kills Amy. Meanwhile, Nick finally solves Amy's third clue. He heads to a woodshed outside Margot's house. Inside, he discovers a large pile of goods. These goods are the same goods that the police showed him in his credit card statement. In disbelief, his eyes wander to a wrapped gift in the middle of them all. Back to the morning of Amy's disappearance, Amy reveals the truth, that she is alive and faked her death. She is upset at her lying and cheating husband. It leads to her plotting revenge to send him to jail. She wants her own husband to be accused of murdering her. For a while, Amy has been writing false information in her diary. She wanted the police to later find this fake diary and convince them to capture Nick. Amy also befriended Noelle without Nick knowing. Her intention was to have her friend convince everyone that Amy was scared of her husband's temper. Furthermore, Amy also faked her pregnancy. When Noelle was visiting her, Amy took a sample from the pregnant Noelle. On purpose, she left the urine for the police to find. The truth is, Amy is never pregnant, it's Noelle's that's pregnant. On the day of her disappearance, she staged the crime scene to make her husband look guilty. She let herself bleed out in the kitchen. She cleaned the kitchen poorly for the police to find. To hide herself, she cuts her hair and beats herself with a hammer. While the investigation is taking place, Amy lives in a small resort. She uses the name Nancy and befriends a woman named Greta. She tells Greta how she went to surprise Nick one day in his bar. Before going in, she came across Nick with another woman during a snowy night. He kissed her the same way he used to kiss Amy. That's how she found out her husband is having an affair. Back in the present, it's now 4 days after Amy disappeared. Nick finally opens the present he found in the shed. Inside, Amy gave him a letter and 2 dolls. The letter confirms that Amy is framing Nick for her fake death. Nick and his sister are now aware of Amy's whole plan, but are clueless on how to stop it. He approaches a hotshot lawyer named Tanner. After listening to Nick's theory that Amy is framing him, he agrees to help Nick. He gives him Tommy's contact information. The lawyer tells Nick to find everything he can about Amy's charges against him in the past. Nick meets Tommy in a bar. He informs Nick that he made Amy upset one time. In retaliation, she accused him of rape. But the truth is, they were having consensual sex. Tommy just confirms to Nick that Amy is indeed a master manipulator. Later on, Tanner visits Nick's house. They come up with a plan to go public about Nick's affair. Before the police find out about his cheating, they will tell the public themselves. The lawyer explains that they need to make him more likable. One way to do it is to portray him as the asshole husband who regrets his wrongdoings. At the resort, Amy accidentally reveals to Greta and her friend that she has a lot of cash. Seeing this, they both rob all of Amy's money. Now broke, Amy calls for Desi's help from a payphone. Desi meets Amy at a payphone. She manipulates him into thinking that she's abused by Nick. She explains that she was afraid of Nick killing her for real, so she disappeared. Desi takes pity on Amy and agrees to let her live in his house. Before they leave, a breaking news appears on the casino's TV. Andy just announces to the whole world of her affair with Nick. With this public declaration, Amy's parents say they no longer support Nick. Desi escorts Amy back to his home. Desi takes Amy's call as a sign that she chooses him over her husband. He becomes very protective of her and puts CCTV everywhere in the house. Together, they watch Nick's public interview on TV. In the interview, Nick insists that he did not kill his wife. He admits that he's not a good husband and he probably does not deserve his wife. Ending the interview, he looks at the camera and tells Amy to come home. His interview completely changes the public opinion on him. People love his honesty and finally cut him some slack. However, things get worse for Nick again when Detective Rhonda shows up at Margot's house. They receive an anonymous tip that says there are strange noises from the woodshed. This anonymous tip is actually from Amy a few days ago to further incriminate Nick. In the woodshed, they find all the goods from Nick's credit card transaction. With this proof in Amy's diary that says Nick may kill her, they arrest Nick. At Desi's house, Amy has to improvise her plan. After Desi leaves for work, Amy soaks her nightgown in wine. She crawls to capture herself in a CCTV camera and fakes her cries. Wailing in despair, Amy acts like Desi has just raped her. Later on, Amy puts a wine bottle inside herself as she prepares for something. She seduces Desi, who just comes home. As they're having sex, Amy grabs a cutter under the pillow. She slashes his throat. Drenched in Desi's blood, Amy leaves him to die. It is now 30 days after Amy's initial disappearance. Nick is woken up by noises outside of his house. He walks to his door and finds Amy. She gets out of her car and approaches Nick. Still drenched in Desi's blood, she faints in his arms. Amy is taken to the hospital for a checkup. The doctor discloses that Amy's wounds are consistent with rape wounds. There will be more tests to match the semen found on Amy. In her testimony, Amy makes up another false story. She tells them Desi kidnapped her and sexually assaulted her every night. He had her tied up in his bed and would starve her. One day she managed to grab a hold of a box cutter. Fed up with his assault, she admits to slitting his throat. Detective Rhonda is not satisfied with her testimony. She finds a lot of loopholes in her story, pointing out that it doesn't make sense because Amy bought a gun before. It also does not support the goods that are found in the woodshed. However, Amy manages to convince the other cops. They all agree with her story and are just happy she's safe. With that, they dismiss Detective Rhonda's concern. The police also dismiss Nick as their prime suspect with the testimony. Amy goes back home with Nick. Upon arrival, Nick demands an explanation from Amy. He does not believe her story in the slightest. Amy reveals that after hearing his interview on TV, she realizes her love for him once again. He has finally become the man she fell in love with 7 years ago. The journey changes him from lazy, hopeless Nick to ambitious, persistent Nick. That is the reason she abandoned her plan to frame him. It's also the reason she killed Desi. To save him. Hearing the truth, Nick threatens to leave her for good. Amy laughs and replies that the public will hate him if he does. Especially after she just comes home from a big trauma. Nick tries to reveal the real truth by meeting with Tanner and Detective Rhonda. But, without proper evidence, there is nothing to be done. Tanner laughs and says they are the most fucked up people he's ever known. He goes on to say that he probably should thank his wife. After the incident, Nick got a book deal, a Lifetime movie, and even franchised his bar. Before leaving, Tanner advises Nick not to piss his wife. Fast forward to 7 weeks later, Nick is still determined to oust Amy. Before an interview with a popular TV personality, Amy gives her husband a gift. The gift is a pregnancy test. It shows that Amy is pregnant. Nick is surprised, saying that he's never touched her after her return. She answers that she does not need to. Enraged by her answer, he demands a lab test and slams her head against the wall. She tells Nick that he can deny it all he wants, but they are made for each other. She points out that the best version of Nick is when he was desperately trying to win her over. Nick does not deny this, knowing her to be right. He finally accepts that they are going to be stuck together again for a long time. As he's running his fingers through his wife's hair, he wonders once again. What is his wife planning next? Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications, and leave a like and comment to help the channel out. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.